Hey, welcome everybody. This is Jim Tincher, CEO at Heart of the Customer, and I am bringing you my very favorite research, the CX Disconnect. If this research doesn't change your perspective about CX, and scare you at least a little bit, then you're not paying attention. Because I'll tell you, it totally redirected my focus on customer experience. Now, some of this is a natural lead in from what I wrote about in Do B2B Better. But when I heard directly from the C suite what they value and by implication what they don't, it blew me away. So that's what we're going to talk today about the CX disconnect, why the C suite isn't thinking about you and how to change that. Now, a little background. A year and a half ago, Greg Melia from CXPA called me and asked if I would lead a new research committee. And I agreed. And the first thing we did is to conduct 34 C-suite interviews. This came about because one of the 3 CXPA strategies was to better engage the C-suite. So we thought we should know what they value. I conducted 31 of the 34 interviews. And we're going to talk today about what they had to say and what it means to all of us in the CX disconnect. So let's start with, okay, who did we talk to? Well, we talked to those people who set the agenda, literally C-suite. Everybody we talked to was either a CEO, half of them, or reported directly to the CEO. Almost all had C in their title. There was one SVP of transformation, and there was one divisional president. Outside of that, they all had C in their title. They range from 50 million to 70 billion. So a huge range in the size of the company. 40% were B2B, 40% were B2C. You do the math, 20% were B2B2C. And it was all done as part of the CXPA's research committee. And before we get into any of the findings or anything else, let me talk about what we didn't hear, because I found that was really the most compelling part of it. So a little bit on our methodology. How did we do it? Now, when Heart of the Customer does research, so let's say, for example, somebody from 3M hires us. We want to understand 3M's customer experience. We don't bring up 3M. They know what we're there about. We ask them instead first about themselves, their goals, what they're trying to accomplish, confident they will bring up 3M. And that happens every single time. Every time within 5 to 7 minutes, after we ask about them and what's important to them, they will bring up our client. And so that's how I approach this as well. I did not bring up customer experience. Everybody I interviewed knew I'm a customer experience thought leader. Everybody knew the CXPA conducted the research. The meeting invitation said customer experience. So with all that anchoring, out of the 34 people we interviewed, how many brought up CX on their own? The answer was 5. Say, okay, 1 out of 7, that's pretty low. It is low, but it gets worse. You see, of the 5, 2 of them were chief experience officers. Another 2 were chief customer officers. So of the 30 remainders, despite having every prompt out there, only one, the CEO in Kansas City, brought up customer experience on their own. Again, if that doesn't concern you or outright scare you, you're not paying attention. CX did not make the C-suite agenda, even with all the prompting. Now, if you have questions as we go, please put it in the chat. I'm delayed by a minute through the StreamYard platform, so I won't get to it immediately, but I will talk about it as we go. So please leave any questions you have. So we know that customer experience was not in the top of the C-suite's mind. So that leads to the natural question, what are they focused on? Well, hopefully you know the answer already because you've listened to your C-suite, because 33 out of 34 had the exact same goal. So the discussion guide was starting out with, what outcomes are you responsible for? How do you measure those outcomes? Do you have any leading indicators for that outcome? What big initiatives are you going after to accomplish that goal? And then lastly, if you're a CEO, who in your team are you relying upon most for making big decisions in the next 2 years? So not only did they not bring up customer experience as a goal, they also didn't bring it up as a leading indicator, nor did they bring it up as one of their big initiatives. They simply didn't bring it up until 15 minutes in, when I would bring it up. So what is their number one goal then? We know it's not customer experience. What is it? Well, now these interviews were all anonymous, so I don't have their names, but you're going to see a number of different roles and a number of different industries, but all with the same goal, including nonprofits, by the way. What was it?
There's really one word that defines everything, the way we think about everything, and that's growth.
My role is to grow this business, drive revenue growth in a sustainable fashion.
If I had to just pick two measures, it's really basic. Are we growing and are customers paying their monthly loan payment?
We're pretty successful, and I think we're growing.
We are in a growth mode, delivering technology features that either improve or expand our offer to the market so that we grow our revenue.
I focus on profitability. I call it profitable growth.
Overall customer growth.
Growth. I could have had 33 people saying growth, but you got the idea. Your C-suite is focused on growth. Now, it was interesting. When I talked to the CMO, it was always growth. When I talked to the CEO, most of the time it was growth. When I talked to the COO and the CFO, it was always profitable growth. But growth nonetheless. That is what your C-suite cares about. And that led to the first finding, which is if you ask an executive whether customer experience is important, well, they'll always say yes. But if you ask them what's important, they rarely will. So don't be fooled. If you're in charge of customer experience and you talk to your CEO, he or she will say, oh, that's so important, because they're talking to you. But when they close the doors, they talk about what's most important. It's about growth. Now, I had an inkling this would be the case. I didn't expect it to be this strong because Gartner found something similar. They asked CEOs, they also did it for CFOs. We're going to focus on CEOs. What are your top 3 initiatives? And then they coded them. They found that 62% named growth as their top priority. So Gartner's research matched ours, which is that your C-suite is focused entirely on growth. It's the highest Gartner found in a decade. It's from 2024. And so that leads to our second outcome, which is if you can't show how you impact growth, prepare to shrink. Your team size will shrink, your budget will shrink, your job may shrink. It's absolutely critical that you connect customer experience to growth because your CEO will not do that for you. That's your job. I was yesterday at a manufacturing client, and the CMO talked about how in the past they had focused on Net Promoter Score, and they bring it up every quarter. And the first quarter, everybody's excited. Second quarter, interested. Third quarter, the numbers sounding the same. By the 6th quarter, it had moved to an appendix item, not discussed. What do they talk about instead? You got it, growth. But what about the customer? I mean, customer, you can't grow without customers, right? Where did that fall in the C-suite? Well, you got a pretty good clue from our research. What did Gartner say? In the top 10 initiatives, customers came in 8th. Now, this is 2024. The good news is that's a growth from 9th the year before, but only 10% mentioned anything to do with customers. Now, that might lead you to think that the C-suite is not focused on customers. Do not believe that. They are intensely customer focused. They just don't believe that you represent the customer. So 15 minutes in, I would finally bring up customer experience, and they would get all excited. Now I'd ask them, what do you mean by that? And that led to our next finding, which is data is the executive love language. We'll talk about what they said in a minute here. Now, I stole this from Bill Stakos. Thank you, Bill. I interviewed him as part of Do B2B Better. And he's right. Executives speak in data, and they spoke specifically in behavioral data. Now, if you read Do B2B Better, you might remember Olga Budieri. At that time, she was with Aramax. She's a reformed engineer, maybe not so reformed. And I love what she had to say. This predated all the research, but she predicted this 5 years ago. Let's hear from Olga.
So obviously, we've all seen those studies where it says, 1 point increase in CSAT equals this, but to a commercial officer or a CEO or a CFO, this sounds like fiction. This doesn't sound real. So it doesn't really put CX in a credible position. So we really want to say this is based on our own actual data. This is the scores for the past year, and this is the revenue or the growth in revenue and the growth in shipments for these exact countries. And this is what it looks like.
Connecting it to the hard data. And you can see Olga's engineering background coming in there because she is, again, very focused on data, which an engineer would be. So what did the C-suite talk about? Again, I asked about customer experience and they got all excited and they talked about revenue, profitability. You can see here, rebuy rate, inventory availability, on-time delivery rates, which is really more operational data, time in transit, fulfillment metrics. The executive's love language is data, operational data, behavioral data. That's what they care about. And so that first finding was that if you ask executives whether customer experience is important, they'll say yes. If you ask them what's important, they won't mention CX. Followed by, if you can't show how you lead to growth, prepare to shrink. Executive love language is data. And our fourth finding is that executives really don't care about what customers say. They care about what customers do. If you do nothing else from this webinar, connect your survey data to behavioral data because your executives are already looking at that. Now, you need to do more to keep your job and to show how you link to growth, but that's the first step. Now, while I'm speaking in doom and gloom, there was an opportunity there. We're going to come back to this. But one of the findings does give us hope. What that was that leading indicators are hard to find. You might remember after I asked them about their number one outcome and how they measure it, I asked if they have leading indicators. And in general, the answer was no. Let's hear from a couple. We could have a much longer clip, but you're getting the idea here.
Most organizations, they try to create some leading indicators, some leading metrics in the business. And
find that much harder than creating a dashboard of lagging indicators.
It's one of the areas that I think we probably don't do as great at is the leading, right? We're good at lagging. Everybody's good at lagging.
Now, if you're not familiar with the phrase, you're probably familiar with the phrase KPI. You may not be familiar with KRI, Key Results Indicator. If we go back to the original language, the original writing, KRI is a lagging indicator, revenue, margin. The results of what you do today show up tomorrow. The leading indicators, or KPIs, are those items that predict it. And that's what executives need. They need to know, am I making the right decisions today that lead to growth tomorrow? Now, I mentioned yesterday I was at a manufacturing client. It was interesting. We looked at their survey. Survey didn't predict anything, except it kind of did. No question on the survey predicted any customer behavior. So that's a waste of time and space. Except those customers who took the survey purchased almost twice as often, repurchased the product in the future. Now, digging deeper, it was a 20-minute phone survey. So what was really the case was the kind of customer who agreed to take a 20-minute phone survey is also the kind of customer who will likely purchase again. Interesting, not very actionable. You want your survey to predict future behavior. Now, last month, I talked about the AMCX survey, Advanced Manufacturing CX Consortium. You can get that on LinkedIn or a YouTube channel. And there I showed how for manufacturing, feeling like a valued customer was the best predictor of growth. If you're going to talk surveys, you need to talk about predictive surveys. My recommendation coming out of this research is no more than 20% of your time should be spent talking about surveys. The rest should be talking about growth, about operational data, about behavioral data. And later on, we're going to talk about how to have that conversation. Now, I often get asked, how do I get my CEO to care about customer experience? Okay. That is the wrong question. It's not about getting your CEO to care about CX. It is instead working through those people the CEO trusts to get CX on the agenda. Let's hear from some of our participants about who they, oh, actually, no, this is from a healthcare CEO who talks about he can't listen to all people report to him. So you need to go to the right folks. Here, let's hear from him.
I think I have 9 or 10 direct reports. I have too many. They do not all get equal time.
You need to find the right person to connect with to get CX on the agenda. You can't go straight to the CEO. So who does the CEO rely upon? Who are the 2 most important executives? Well, IBM asks this every year. They haven't reported on it the last few years, so we've got to go back a few years. It probably will not shock you to know who the top 2 executives are. Let's see the chart. Okay. CFO and COO. Now, they're always the top 2. They go in sometimes CFO, sometimes COO. It changes every year. You see, technology is next, but the plurality of CX programs report to the CMO. And you know, CMO is almost down to the CHRO. Marketing is not the trusted advisor. I'm sorry for those marketing leaders attending this. It's not my data, it's IBM's. But if you look at the CFO, the COO, and the CIO, CTO, what's true about all of them? They speak in data. There's a great HBR article about a year and a half ago about having the CMO and CFO partner on metrics, because it doesn't happen very often. The CFO and COO lead the agenda. You need to connect with them to get CX on the agenda. And here's what's interesting. Now, this research is 6 years old. It's a bit stale. But I asked CX leaders, how often you meet with finance and with operations. And the top two answers were the same for both. Once a year and never. If you are not working directly with the CFO and COO, or perhaps down a level, but not working with finance and operations, you have zero chance impacting the organization. You are a survey person. You're doing voice of the customer. And survey people rarely create impact. So now that I've totally depressed you, what are we going to do about it? We need to take a dramatic look at how we do customer experience. 7 years ago, Customer Think reported that only 1 out of 4 programs could show any business impact whatsoever. My own research, documented in Do B2B Better, found the exact same number, 25%. At that time, the XM Institute reported that 25%, the exact same number again, could show business value. Now, unlike my research and Customer Think, XM Institute reports it every year. So now we've had 6 years since that first report to improve results. And the numbers have gotten better. Last year, the XM Institute reported that the number of programs creating CX impact, or creating business impact, jumped from 25% to 26%. Another 300 years, we're going to get there. We have to look at our work differently. And that starts with the definition of customer experience. So I went out and looked. I looked at Forrester's definition. I looked at Gartner's definition. I looked at Harvard Business Review, how they define it. And one thing was common. They were so passive. It's all about what the customers perceive about your company. Okay. Now, CXM, Customer Experience Management, a little bit better, but this is my definition of customer experience. This is what we have to look at. Customer experience is the cross-functional act of changing your operations to change customer behaviors to drive profitable outcomes. In Do B2B Better, one of the things I reported on is that the change makers, the 1 out of 4 programs that could show business value, were far more likely to study behaviors rather than surveys, to care about what customers do rather than what they say, exactly what the executives felt. And that's what we need to do too. We need to look and use the surveys as a diagnostic to then change the behavior, change the operations, so we can change what customers do. And by which I mean to get them to want to buy from you more often, to get them to want to renew their contracts with you, to get them to want to use your digital tools, are less expensive, to get them to be more of a partner so that it becomes more profitable for you. If you can't show how you're driving growth and profitability in your voice of the customer, you're not customer experience. So what does this look like? And so I've shared 7 different behaviors. What is passive CX and what's active? First of all, customer first. Now, I know when you go to your company's lobby, whenever you go into the office, you see customers the number 1 priority on the wall. But you also see in your operations that that's not always the case, and it never will be. If you ask your CEO, would you rather have a net promoter score of 90, or would you rather be driving profitability and growth? They're going to laugh you out of the office for asking such a stupid question. It's not customer first. It's start with the business need and then bring the customers into it. If your business is seeing declining renewals, that's the business problem. Let's understand the customers so we can see why that is. If you're seeing cross-sell is low, well, let's understand why the customers are not buying more. What are we doing wrong? Start with the business problem, then bring in the customers to understand it. Now, the rest of these are all things you should do, but they're insufficient. So, for example, we listen to our customers. Yes, that's what voice of the customer does. It's passive. Active CX, we change what the company does, therefore what the customers do. We are changing behaviors of the company to change the behaviors of the customer to create a more profitable outcome. Third, focus on surveys and sentiment. Okay, you know I'm going to say that's passive. We have that. Again, no more than 20% of your talk track goes here, but only to give you the information you need to know which parts of the operations to change to create better customer outcomes. So you should instead focus on systems and behaviors. Something I do in kind of a side project, I love to study people who are promoted out of customer experience. Brian Sander at AAA is a great example. And when I interviewed him, he talked about how he focuses on the business's KPIs. He uses customer experience as a lens. He focuses on systems and behaviors. Fourth, sits in marketing and customer care. Now, you can actually sit in marketing and be successful. Never customer care. I don't care for that as organizational design because you tend to get involved with the call center. Marketing can, but we saw earlier, they're only fourth in terms of influence for the CEO. But regardless of where you sit, it's less important than where you are in the organization. More importantly, are you sitting at the table with finance, operations, and product? Because they're the ones driving the agenda. I actually probably should add sales to that as well. In our interviews, we found that similar to what IBM found, that CFO and COO are the two most important, but sales was third. I don't think IBM asked about sales, which is why it wasn't on there, because sales has a different title. CRO, Chief Sales Officer, VP of Sales, is not as consistently as, say, COO. But sitting at the table with them because they're the ones driving the agenda. Measure NPS. I don't care if you measure NPS if it's predictive, but it's a lagging indicator, so it usually isn't. You can go ahead and measure it. Your CEO wants it, fine, whatever. But more important than that is also measuring retention, revenue, and cost to serve, because that's what the CEO really cares about. And show how your surveys impact those. And number 6, create dashboards. Well, yes, you're still going to create dashboards. Fine, whatever. But more importantly is drive transformation. Do something with the results. And this last one, well, if you look behind me, you know this one hurts me. And if you know my license plate, JRNYMAP, it hurts me to say it's not about mapping journeys. Now, we still do that, but it's become way less common because the business problems we're focusing on have really shifted in the last 2 years, away from I want a journey map to I need to improve growth. I need to slash churn. I need customers to buy more from us. Growth-based. So instead of mapping journeys, change the business. Earlier, I mentioned an opportunity, that the one area where the C-suite needs help is leading indicators. How can you partner with finance to create leading indicators? And hint, you can't do it meeting once a year. Now, I know finance people can seem scary. They talk a different language. But take heart from CIBC, where when I talked to Stephanie a couple years ago, she mentioned how she was presenting at the Medallion Conference. They use finance, they call them accounting, they're Canadian, to present their data because they're instantly credible. Work with them. But the good news is we have leading indicators. We just aren't reporting that way, or at least we can if we do it right. We own the missing metric. Heart of the customer, we call this the growth chain. And it uses the LEAD acronym, LEAD, because we're creating leading indicators. And there is a growth chain. It starts with your operational levers. Now, I want to be careful. It's not just operations. It's marketing. It's your sales team. It's your policies. It's your product. Those operational levers create an emotional response in your customers. That emotional response then changes their actions, which lead to dollars. This growth chain is how to take your data in the emotions section and show, first of all, what's creating those emotions, your operational levers, and then how is that changing your customers' actions or behaviors, which is what your C-suite looks at today to change the dollars. Here's a quick example of what Dow did. They found that when they resolve complaints in 30 days and on-time deliveries, it impacts an emotion, which is enjoyability is a main example. We had a separate example of confidence. But we found these two emotions are very predictive of customer behaviors. Those at higher enjoyability bought more products at higher margin and were more likely to engage in joint innovation, which led to more products purchased, higher cross-sell, higher sales, higher profitability. So we'll wrap by saying, how can you build your own growth chain? Well, you would build it backwards. Start with the financial metric finance already cares about. Is it cross-sell? Is it margin? It's probably not revenue, it's more likely margin. But let's start with that. Let's see which survey factors actually predict the behaviors behind that. Connect your surveys to the outcomes your executives care about. Then find the operational behavior metrics that represent each survey factor. Like, for example, if relationship is the most important factor for manufacturing, so it was the second most important, then let's study more about what's happening with the sales team. Is there a lot of turnover? Do we have enough meetings? Then take your working chain of value to finance to validate. Partner with them and then let them communicate the results. Because finance is immensely more credible than you are. Sorry to say it, but finance is the most important company or part of the company, followed by operations. Again, they go back and forth. But partner with finance because they will be credible. And lastly, don't be a CX leader who understands business. I know we say it a lot. No. Become a business leader who uses CX as a lens, as a methodology and approach, but focus on the business. So you want more detail? We have a white paper on this. Of course, we still have surveys part of our toolkit. I've got a survey, of course. If you fill it out, give me some feedback, you'll get the white paper, which goes deeper into what the C-suite had to say. So I mentioned earlier, this research completely changed my approach to customer experience. Help me understand we are missing the mark. We need to become business leaders first, using CX as a lens. If you want to talk more about this, reach out. I'm at jim@heartofthecustomer.com. And so I'll pass it back to Jared to wrap up here. Thanks for being part of this. And again, fill out the survey, get the white paper, and reach out and let's talk how you can become a change maker.